All right, we're getting there. We're almost live, baby. I see it on my other screen, so we're good there. One more place.
Yeah, I see it.
You see it? All right, awesome. Here. All righty. All right, I'm going to send it over to you in a minute. I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate you all attending this great event that we have with Janice. She has a book out called, ooh, you can't really see it, Simple Guide. Simple Guide, there you go, Simple Guide to CBD. It's a great book if you're trying to find alternative ways to deal with your chronic pain while you're dealing with lupus. She is the owner of Cannabis Wellness Center, and I'm excited because she actually, responded back and talked to me, and we had a great conversation. So I'm excited for her to talk to us today. But I do want to say, and right before we start, everything that we discuss is just for educational purposes. If you change your regimen or your medical treatments, please speak to your doctor first. Everything that you're hearing here is just for educational purposes, for your information, so that you can take back to your doctor and discuss if it's something that you should be doing. Okay? So I'm going to let Janice be the host here, and we will start it off.
All right. Am I host?
All right, here we go.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Let's see. Let me try
and
this.
You're the host?
Oh, I'm the host.
Yeah, you should be.
Okay. Let's see.
There we go.
Alina, am I good?
We see it.
All right, Mika, are we good on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay,
All
awesome.
right. I love it when technology works.
Yes, we finally got it.
Phew. That's fun. Okay, well, thank you, Raquel, for inviting me to speak. It's really a pleasure to be with everybody. I am JANICE BISSEX, and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and a holistic cannabis practitioner. So you might wonder, how did I ever get from being a dietitian to a holistic cannabis practitioner? So let me tell you my story. So 4 years ago, when my dad was in his early 80s, he had some medical issues that caused some very severe pain. The doctors gave him the traditional pain medications, and they made him groggy and so severely constipated that it required a 4-day hospital stay. At the end of this hospital stay, I said to his doctor, "Isn't there anything else that we can do for his pain?" And I said, "What about medical marijuana?" Because I knew that it had just been legalized in Massachusetts, and yet I knew nothing about it, literally nothing about it. I actually used to say, yeah, medical marijuana, because I didn't understand. I grew up in the just say no generation. You remember that. Oh, it's a gateway drug. It's not good. It's going to make you, kill all your brain cells. So I didn't know anything. So when my dad's doctor said, "I think that's a great idea," I thought, oh, great. Now I need to do some research. So I did. And the more I learned, the more I thought, seriously, why is this not an option for people to manage their pain and anxiety and a host of other conditions? So we got my dad certified. I took him to a dispensary, got him a vape pen, a high CBD vape pen. We came home and he took a couple of puffs and he stood up to go upstairs to take a nap. And he said, "Wow." And I said, "Are you okay? Are you dizzy? What's the matter?" He said, "I'm not in pain." And I thought, wow, it literally changed my life. That day I decided to leave my business of 15 years. I was a cookbook author and a food blogger and a radio podcaster. And I went back to school to become a holistic cannabis practitioner. And now this is all I do. I help people manage pain and other conditions using mostly CBD and sometimes medical cannabis. So when many people think of cannabis users, we have a stereotypical view, right? We think that they're stoners. We think that they're hippies or people who just sit around and get stoned all day. But in reality, it's your grandmother with arthritis. it's your colleague with Crohn's disease who may be afraid to share with you that they're using this because of the stigma. It might be your child with autism or seizure disorders, your teenage niece or nephew with social anxiety, or your neighbor trying desperately to get off opioids. So who's using cannabis? Everyone thinks, oh, it's the young people. And when we legalize it, the young people will be using more, they're gonna be smoking weed all day. In reality, when states legalize cannabis, teen use does not increase at all. I think they think, oh, well, now that my parents and grandparents are using it, it's not cool anymore. I don't want to smoke weed now. So the fastest growing segment of cannabis users is those 65 and over. There's been a 10-fold increase in the last decade. And it's not a coincidence that those over 65, more than half of them have experienced pain in the last month. So why do people use it? People use it for relaxation, just for stress relief, to manage their anxiety, to help them sleep. Medical conditions, pain is the #1 medical condition that people turn to medical cannabis or cannabis. I mean, cannabis, medical cannabis, they're both the same. They're both cannabis. So that's what people are using it for. And let me show you a little bit of history. I always like to go over a little bit of history. This is not new medicine. It's been used for 5,000 years medicinally to treat a wide variety of conditions. Doctors actually carried cannabis tinctures in their medical bags. And everything was great. Queen Victoria used a cannabis tincture to help manage her menstrual cramps. And then in the early 1900s, things went poorly. The doctors were using it still. It was in the pharmacopoeia, which is that big book that doctors use to look at dosing information for all the different drugs, right? Cannabis was in there from 1850 until 1942. But what happened in the 1930s? We had alcohol prohibition, which went away. So the head of alcohol prohibition, the Bureau of Narcotics, Harry Anslinger was his name. He was a racist, I'll just say that. And he basically didn't like the fact that Mexican immigrants and Black jazz singers used this cannabis. That annoyed him, and he didn't like these people. So he decided to vilify cannabis, to tell people that it was horrible, it was going to destroy our society. And he used the term marijuana to give it a Mexican sounding name, an exotic name, not cannabis that it's been used for decades, for hundreds of years. It's cannabis, it's a cannabis plant. He renamed it marijuana and basically removed it from access. It was a marijuana tax act, and it made it so prohibitive that nobody could afford to buy it. And there were very harsh penalties for the use of cannabis. And then in 1970, under the Nixon administration, the Just Say No, they made it cannabis a Schedule I substance, which means there is high potential for abuse and no medical value, both of which are very, very untrue. So not only did this deprive people of this medicine, but it also resulted in the imprisonment of many, many people for minor cannabis offenses, particularly young Black men. And it's disgraceful. Just today, New Mexico legalized the adult use of cannabis, and with that, they expunged the criminal records of anyone who had been arrested for cannabis. And that's something that we're fighting for. NORML, N-O-R-M-L, the National Organization for Marijuana Law Reform, has been at this for decades, trying to make this medicine legal again. California was the first to approve medical cannabis. The New England Journal of Medicine called for the rescheduling of cannabis. The American Medical Association back in 1937, they fought against this, but they did not win. The Institute of Medicine came out with a report in 1999 saying that cannabis has very high potential for the treatment of pain, anxiety, appetite loss, and nausea. And in fact, the US government holds a patent on cannabinoids, on CBD and cannabinoids, and as antioxidants and neuroprotectants, because scientists were looking for something that would help with neurodegenerative diseases, and they found that cannabinoids held the most promise. So they have a patent. Our government has a patent on CBD, and yet in cannabis, other cannabinoids, and yet it remains federally illegal. Okay, before we get any further, let's just talk about the difference between cannabis and hemp. So they both come from the same plant family. It's Cannabis sativa L. Hemp contains a tiny, tiny amount of THC. THC is that part of the plant that makes you high, that makes you stoned, or it can in excess. So hemp plants contain very small amount of that. Cannabis can contain up to 30% THC. Cannabis is federally illegal, although it is legal in 26 states and DC. And the adult use of cannabis, so without even a medical card, is legal in 17 states. Hemp protection was legalized in 2018, which is why you've seen a big increase in CBD products on the market. So the main components of a cannabis or hemp plant, there are three main components. Cannabinoids. THC is a cannabinoid, CBD is a cannabinoid. THC is psychotropic, it can make you high. CBD is non-intoxicating. So you can take a lot of CBD, you're never going to get high or impaired. There are 100 other cannabinoids. We're not going to get into those, but they all work together. Terpenes are what give a plant its smell, its aroma. So if you smell lavender, you know that nice calming smell that you get? That's from linalool, which is a terpene in the plant. And then there are flavonoids. So when dietitians say, eat more fruits and vegetables, that's because of the antioxidants and flavonoids in the vegetable or the fruit or the plant. So let's talk about CBD. Cannabidiol is the formal name. These are some of the actions of CBD. It can be effective for pain relief. It's a potent anti-inflammatory, which is why it can be so helpful for such a wide variety of conditions. It's antibacterial. It has anti-seizure properties, anti-nausea, antidepressant, anti-anxiety. It's neuroprotective, as evidenced by the US government having a patent. And it's also good for bone health. And then we have THC. Now, some people say to me, well, that's the bad cannabinoid. That's not a bad cannabinoid. It's a good cannabinoid. It's only bad if taken in excess. I mean, that's like, you know, I can have a glass of wine with dinner and nobody judges me. And yet if someone takes a couple of puffs, right, on a joint or a vape pen, somehow that's different, that's wrong. It's not. It's one could argue, and I would argue that now, which 5 years ago, I did not believe this, but I would argue now that it is better for your health to use a little bit of cannabis than to drink alcohol. It's just better. There are so many neuroprotective and anti-inflammatory and all these wonderful properties of the plant that it's, I mean, kind of a health food. So THC is a very good appetite stimulant, not great if you're trying to manage your weight, but really good if you're having chemotherapy or if you're elderly and you don't have an appetite. It's a muscle relaxant, it's a bronchodilator. So people use THC when they have an asthma attack. They actually, THC opens up the airways as opposed to tobacco smoke, which constricts the airways. The entourage effect says that the whole plant is greater than the sum of its parts. So you want to use a whole plant formula. You don't want just a CBD molecule. And there are products out there, they're called isolates, and it's just CBD. Those are the ones that you usually find at the gas station or Bed Bath & Beyond. And they're cheap and they just have CBD. But the beauty of the plant is the synergy between the cannabinoids, the terpenes, the antioxidants, the flavonoids, they all work well together. So everybody here has an endocannabinoid system. Even that cat that we saw earlier that's still there sleeping, Heather's cat, even the cat has an endocannabinoid system. And why would we have a system that accepts the cannabinoids in a plant? I mean, that sort of doesn't make sense, but it makes sense when you realize we make our own cannabinoids. So we make cannabinoids in our own body. We know of at least two of the more common ones. The bliss molecule, it's called anandamide. Ananda is the Sanskrit word for bliss. So anandamide is, our body makes it, and it makes us feel good. So we want more anandamide, right? Now, if your body doesn't make enough anandamide, like some people don't make enough thyroid hormone, then your incidence of anxiety and depression is increased. So we want to retain the anandamide that our body makes. So this anandamide interacts with receptors in our body to elicit an effect. It could be neurocalming, it could be decreasing pain. So we have all these cannabinoids in our body, they attach to receptors and they have an effect. And the main effect is it promotes balance or homeostasis in our body. And that's what the endocannabinoid system is about. We have receptors from head to toe. There are receptors on our kidneys. These are cannabinoid receptors on our kidneys, in our brain, in our digestive system, on our skin, and our peripheral nervous system. Everywhere we have receptors in our body that are waiting. It's like a lock and a key. So it's a lock and it's waiting for that key, which would be either the cannabinoids that we make or the cannabinoids from the plant. So if we don't make enough on our own and we use a little bit of cannabis or CBD, that will affect that lock and it will open it up so that you can have the good effect, the anti-inflammation, the decrease in anxiety, the neurocalming. Pain, let's talk about pain. Pain is the #1 reason for cannabis use. Back pain, joint pain, headache pain. So the way that cannabis and CBD help with pain, I already said it decreases inflammation. It's very dramatic, the decrease in inflammation. It decreases the pain signaling. So when you have pain, that signal is sent throughout your body and the signal is passed from one neuron to the next. So what happens is CBD and cannabis can block some of that signaling. So it decreases the pain. I always tell people it's not going to take a pain of 10 to a 0. It just won't do that. I have clients who have taken a pain of 8 down to a 3 or 4. And I say, we got to get better. And they said, oh, you have no idea how dramatic that is. That is life-changing. So that's something that I work with people to get the pain under control and have it be manageable. So CBD in particular can increase that bliss molecule. We all need a little bliss right now, am I right? CBD can also increase serotonin, which is another one of these compounds in your body that's a feel-good compound. So CBD increases the serotonin, which may not directly decrease pain, but it decreases the perception of pain because you're a little bit more relaxed and not quite as in pain. Okay, cannabis versus opioids. First thing, cannabis is not a gateway drug. It is not. It is an exit herb. They did a study in 2016 and they gave cannabis, they supplemented with people who use opioids and they supplemented with cannabis and these people decreased their opioid use by 44%. It's classic. I see it all the time with my clients. I have a client right now with lung cancer. She's taking OxyContin, but she can take 2.5 milligrams when she supplements with CBD and cannabis. And if she can keep it at that dose, then she won't get all these side effects, the constipation and all the other side effects from a higher dose of opioids. Legal cannabis states have a 25% decrease in opioid mortality. We lose 100 people every single day from an opioid overdose. Nobody wants to be addicted to opioids. People are given this pain medication and it is physically addictive and it's hard, it's really hard to get off of it. So CBD can help with that. In particular, there are 3 ways to use cannabis instead of opioids. So you can use it for pain control to decrease the dosage of opioids. You can use during withdrawal to manage those symptoms. In preventative, you could use it in place of opioids, Raquel, did you see someone trying to come in? There was someone that was in the waiting room. I just saw it and then it disappeared. So I'm not sure how to admit someone. Should I? You're on mute, dear.
Go figure. When it pops up, you can hit admit because these are personal links that they have.
Okay, it came and it went. Let me see if I
Okay.
can. Let me see if I can find it.
If you hit participants,
Yes.
and then if you see anybody there, it will show over the participants that are in the room.
Mhm.
Above it, it will show who's in the waiting room.
Love it. I just see people that are here. I don't.
Okay, so you see 9 participants.
I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, yeah. If it pops up again, then you'll know what to do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No, fine.
Okay. So preventative to use in place of opioids to avoid addiction in the first place. So this is a graphic. It shows the regular cycle of addiction. So you become intoxicated and then you go through withdrawal symptoms, you stop using it, and then you relapse because of those physical symptoms that are so hard to manage. When you add CBD in particular, when you withdraw from the medication, that reduced anxiety, pain, and mood swings from the CBD can reduce those drug cravings and allow you to stay off or at a lower dose of the opioids. So I'm going to run through a few ways that CBD and cannabis can help. For mental health, CBD can actually decrease abnormally persistent emotional memories. So in PTSD, phobias, and addiction. It can decrease anxiety and depression, again, by increasing that bliss molecule, increasing serotonin, and also decreasing something called cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So CBD can do all of that to promote balance and calm. And this, of course, improves quality of life. Sleep issues. Many women in particular, many of us have issues with sleep on occasion, sometimes frequent. There are many causes of lack of sleep. There's pain, anxiety, all sorts of issues. People, if you drink a lot of alcohol, it can interrupt your sleep, caffeine, hormonal issues. So you can manage. CBD helps a lot of people with sleep. CBN is another cannabinoid that's particularly good for sleep. There are other things that people can do to try to help with sleep. Warm milk with cloves helps some people. Deep breathing. So just before bed, taking 10 deep breaths, or when you wake up at night, some like a white noise machine. Make sure your room is dark. Turn off your screens before bed. No sitting on your phone right up until I'm looking at you, Raquel. So they say 2 hours before bed. That's just not realistic for most people, but at least 20 minutes before bed, turn off the phone, turn off the TV, and read a book or do some deep breathing or do some yoga or meditation. And that really does help a lot with sleep. Some people find that taking a magnesium supplement before bed helps. Melatonin helps some people, the valerian and chamomile. Skin conditions. CBD possesses pretty potent anti-inflammatory, as I mentioned, antimicrobial and anti-itch properties. So a lot of people who have eczema, psoriasis, hives, TMJ, migraines. Migraines isn't really a skin condition, but I'm thinking of the topical that can be used there. So it can help with this itchiness that a lot of people experience. They've done studies on people with atopic dermatitis. They found a 60% improvement using CBD. Topical CBD can actually help with acne as well. My older daughter, she's 29 now, and when I told her I was going into this field, she was kind of horrified. She's sort of like her mother, kind of a, one of these goody two-shoes. And I said, but Carolyn, you saw how it helped Grandpa. And she said, yeah, I know. And then a few months later, she said, Mom, I read in the New York Times that CBD can help with acne. Can you hook me up? I'm like, okay, yeah. And I say this to many people, that until you find relief yourself or someone that you love finds relief using cannabis or CBD, you don't understand. You don't understand the power of this plant. CBD can decrease age-related bone loss, and it helps bones heal. They did a test in rats that had broken femurs, and the rats that got CBD healed twice as fast, and their bones were actually stronger after they healed. I mean, imagine for all of us with osteoporosis who, you know, might suffer a break of a bone. That's pretty impressive. Diabetes, the endocannabinoid system is involved in blood sugar regulation. A study showed, again, this was a study with mice that were inserted with the gene for diabetes. So these mice were diabetic mice. Half were given CBD, half were not. When they were given CBD, only 30% developed diabetes. The ones who didn't get CBD, 86% developed diabetes. Again, very significant outcomes when they do these tests. It also decreases inflammation. Cannabis use is associated with lower insulin resistance. Okay, GI issues. Because of the decrease in inflammation, it can help our gut. It can reduce hypermotility in our gut. It's antibacterial. It stimulates the lining of our GI tract, which improves the health. It can calm anxiety. And it also has been shown to decrease GERD or reflux. Okay, let's get to lupus. So you know all of this, but women age 15 to 44 are at higher risk. And it's a chronic autoimmune disease. So your body can't tell the difference between viruses, germs, and bacteria in your body's own tissue. So your body overreacts to it when it really shouldn't. It causes inflammation and pain in different parts of the body, and in particular, the skin, the joints, internal organs like the heart and the kidneys. There are different types of lupus: SLE, systemic lupus, erythematosus, that's the most common, and then cutaneous, which pertains to the skin, drug-induced lupus. Some people, after being on certain medications, will develop lupus, and neonatal lupus among little babies. Here are some of the common medications. You're probably all familiar with these. Some people that I know have been on methotrexate, and some of the side effects from that include nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, fatigue, dizziness, and it also might lower your ability to fight infections. So that's why cannabis is such an exciting option for people, because the side effects from these other medications can be very severe. And obviously you want to ask a medical cannabis professional before you add cannabis, because of the potential for drug interactions, which we're going to get to in a minute. Okay, so here's some more information. Again, you know this: sensitivity to sunlight, headaches, and CBD and cannabis may help to reduce pain and inflammation for this condition in particular. Okay, so how do you take it? So you say, okay, yeah, let's maybe give this a try. Well, we don't have to be out, smoking joints, but if we want to, that's one option. And that is actually a very fast way to get medicine in, is smoking or vaping. I would prefer vaping because it burns at a little bit lower temperature, so it's not as caustic to your lungs. You can take a tincture under your tongue, you hold it for a minute or two, and then you swallow. It takes effect in about 15 minutes. Capsules, some people like the convenience of just taking a daily soft gel. Inhalation, we mentioned. Edibles have a longer relief time, so you get relief for 6 to 8 hours if you use an edible. Edible is, an edible acts the same as a soft gel. Topical creams, really great for joint pain, for any skin rashes or other issues with the skin. It's transdermal, that's, you could put a patch on your wrist and that has a slow release of medicine. Suppositories, good for lower abdominal issues, menstrual cramps. Some people who have colon cancer have used suppositories. Raw juice, you would have to grow your own if you want to have raw juice. But if you do grow cannabis plants, pluck off the leaves, wash them, and then juice them. or just put them in a blender and add some coconut milk or some water. And then you have to drink it right away though, and it doesn't taste great, I'm just warning you. But it's really, really very effective for autoimmune diseases. Okay, this is a description of the onset and the duration. So as I said, inhaled is very fast acting. So if you have pain that comes on really suddenly, inhalation is not a bad option. To have a vape pen nearby. If you have severe pain, you can take a couple of puffs and find relief. Sublingual, we talked about that. Ingested, which lasts longer, but takes longer to take effect. And if you know anyone who says they had a bad experience, or if any of you have, because I'll bet someone has, probably it's because they tried an edible, because edibles don't take effect for about 2 hours. And what we do, and I say we take a couple of bites and we say, you know, I don't feel anything. There's nothing in here, Mary. I mean, and then you take a couple more bites, and then 2 hours later, you are completely paranoid and completely rapid heart rate, dry mouth, just really. And some people get to the point where they call 911 because it's that uncomfortable. No one has ever died from a cannabis overdose. And if this happens to you or someone you know, I'm going to admit, Randy, there we go. I acted a little faster there, Raquel. So if you or someone you know ever gets into this situation where you've overconsumed an edible, drink lots of water, just sit on a couch with a friend and watch a movie, preferably a funny movie, and chew on a peppercorn, and that will bring down that high. And someone else told me that you can chew on a lemon. Wow, that'll take care of you. So those are ways that you can, and you just wait it out. You just wait out, and don't eat something high in fat, because fat prolongs the effect, which is a good thing if you're using cannabis for pain. I always have my clients take their soft gel with a handful of nuts, because the pain relief will last longer. All right. Okay, how do you find a good quality CBD product? The FDA did a study, the Food and Drug Administration did a study a couple of years ago, and they found that 70% of CBD products on the market were mislabeled. Some of them had no CBD in them. The reason for this is that to organically grow a plant into maturation, to harvest it, to dry it, to cure it, to extract it, and then make a product, it's expensive. I mean, that's why, unfortunately, these products are relatively expensive. So some people, when this was first coming to the market, they're like, I'm just going to put some olive oil in a bottle and slap a CBD sticker on there. And so you have to be really careful. Don't buy CBD at a gas station, please. Don't buy it at Bed Bath & Beyond. Really, really do your homework. Ask for independent lab testing, so that if the bottle says there are 1,000 milligrams of CBD in this bottle, you need to say, could you show me the COA, the certificate of analysis? And if they say, well, no, then don't buy it. Just don't buy it. Because you have to really make sure that what they say is in there is really in there. You want full or broad spectrum. Remember we talked about the isolate with just the molecule? You don't want that. Full spectrum has all the cannabinoids, all the terpenes, everything in the plant. Broad spectrum has all of that except the THC. So I have a lot of clients that are law enforcement. I have some truck drivers, and they can't risk a positive drug test. So they use a broad spectrum product. Dosing, we always start low, because if you can get relief with 2 or 3 milligrams, I don't want you to start it at 50, because that's a waste of money. So I always start my clients really low, and then we work our way up. So I have clients using 4 drops of my water-soluble tincture, and I have a woman using 30 drops because she has such severe pain. So I always have people keep a journal so that we can find out what that best dose is, the least amount that they can take to find relief. And it can take 2 weeks or more to find relief. So sometimes people will do it for a few days and say, oh, it's not working. Well, it's not going to work in a few days. It's taken a long time for your body to be inflamed and to have a chronic condition. So you have to be patient. It can take 2 weeks, it can take 4 weeks. If you have GI issues, it can take 8 weeks to 10 weeks to find relief. THC tolerance is a thing. So if you're using cannabis and you use it regularly, your body develops a tolerance. So you'll keep needing more and more and more, and that gets expensive. So what you have to do is take tolerance breaks. So that means either 1 day a week, do not use any cannabis, or for a week every month or 6 weeks, you have to stop using it. And that resets your receptors so that you can go back to using that smaller amount. Okay, potential side effects of CBD. The most common that I hear is vivid dreams. People say they remember their dreams more. Fatigue usually only lasts the first week or two until your body adjusts to it. Low blood pressure. If someone has very low blood, this has only happened to one of my clients, and I've probably worked with 1,000 people. And it was an elderly gentleman who had very low blood pressure, and he took some CBD, and he had a lot of anxiety and mental health issues. And he just said, I'm freaking out. I think I'm dizzy. So I said, okay, CBD is not for you. So it's because CBD opens up your blood vessels, which is a good thing, right? You get more blood to your brain and to your heart. We all need that. It can cause a little bit of dizziness in people who have very low blood pressure. Like I said, it's only happened to one of my clients, and I have very low blood pressure, and I take 25 milligrams of CBD, and I've never felt dizzy. Hopefully it won't start tonight. Dry mouth, it's usually with THC that you have the dry mouth. Some people say with CBD. GI issues, some people say for the first week or so, they have some loose stools. That also resolves when your body gets used to it. The World Health Organization basically says, looking at all the CBD trials, it's well tolerated with a good safety profile. Drug interactions. Okay, CBD and cannabis may increase the effect of some drugs. So you need to really look at what you're taking and make sure that there won't be an interaction. If you're taking a drug and the doctor said, don't eat grapefruit, there's a potential that CBD could interact with it, because the same pathway that metabolizes, that breaks down that medication, also breaks down CBD. So there's a potential that it could increase or decrease the drug level in your body. It's particularly a problem with Coumadin and warfarin, because that's for blood clotting, and you don't want to mess with the level of Coumadin in your blood. This is with ingestible CBD. So a soft gel or an edible. If you're using a tincture or if you're vaping, it's not a problem like it is with an edible, because it doesn't have to go through your liver to be processed. There is some synergy with medications. Well, with opioids, for example, you can use less opioids if you add some CBD or some cannabis. Alcohol, you don't want to be drinking, 5 beers and using cannabis, because it can impair you. You want to check with a cannabis practitioner. So potential downside, it's not all rosy. The short-term effects of cannabis are increased heart rate, distorted perception, a loss of coordination, and issues with memory and learning. So you need to be aware of that. Cannabis use disorder, this is 8 to 12% of heavy users of cannabis. And it's much more common with early age onset of use. So when teenagers, it's at 13, start using cannabis and really use it heavily, it can be a problem long-term. And it's really impairment that affects your behavior, your health, and your relationships. It's not just heavy cannabis use. There are people who use a lot of cannabis for medical reasons, but it's not impairing their relationships. They're using it so that they can function. So it's not just heavy use. It's heavy use that really comes with a lot of other things with it. All right, wow. So I have my fabulous intern, Alina, with me today, and she's going to talk real briefly about some nutrition tips for lupus, and then we're going to do questions. So take it away, Alina.
All right, thanks, Janice. So yep, like she said, my name's Alina, and so I did a little bit of research as far as what they recommend for lupus, and generally they recommend typically the same things they would recommend for the general population, but there are a couple things that we want to keep in mind, especially for lupus. One of those is vitamin D, and that'll be on this slide. So they do recommend watching levels of vitamin D with lupus. Typically, we get our vitamin D from sunlight and through our food. Those with higher melanin have a more difficult time making this vitamin D because we absorb it from the sun and then make it in our bodies. They might have a little bit more time, a difficult time absorbing it because of more of that melanin that's there. And typically they'll need to spend more time in the sun to be able to synthesize this. Those who live in a cloudy area too, or they get less sunlight, they might also be deficient in vitamin D. And those with lupus also tend to have lower levels of vitamin D just because of those combinations of the lupus disease activity, corticosteroid use, and avoidance of that sunlight, because protection from the sun helps to prevent those lupus flare-ups. So why should we care about vitamin D? What's so important about vitamin D? Well, low levels of vitamin D are associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, a lower ability to fight infection, and development of osteoporosis later in life. So that's why it's really important to make sure we're getting plenty of vitamin D in the diet. And fruits and vegetables are also another thing that's really important to making sure you're getting. This also helps reduce inflammation as well. They're rich in phytonutrients, like she said before, the terpenes, and all those are in them as well as with cannabis. So you also get those in your fruits and vegetables. So that's why it's really important to make sure that you're getting those every day. If you can, try to get it with every meal. And they also recommend eating the rainbow because there's so many different phytonutrients in the different colors of fruits and vegetables. So try to get all those different colors, and you can include it any way you want. It doesn't have to be all fresh. It can be frozen as well, canned, dried. I would just watch out for dried because it can tend to have a higher sugar content in the dried fruit, but it's still a good option. I would still include, a little bit of everything in there. And then you can also do herbs and spices. Right there on the slide, I listed turmeric, ginger, rosemary, and sage, because those are the top ones that show a lot of health benefits and a lot of help protecting against that inflammation. So if you can, try to include those. I like to have those in my cabinet ready to cook with, just because they have so much good research with those and the health benefits of it. So really important if you can. Turmeric's good to put on some eggs in the morning. It'll brighten up the color of your eggs. Ginger has a really good bite. You can make it with rice. Rosemary is just good in everything. I love rosemary. It's got a real nice herby feel. Sage, you can even put it in pastas or soups. Right. And next, we'll be talking about omega-3s, because omega-3s are also another way to help with inflammation. Omega-3s are healthy fats, and they can be found in different plant sources like vegetable oils, nuts, seeds, vegetables. They can also be found in hemp seeds. So another good way that hemp's also beneficial is the seeds that come from there. They have omega-3s. Just want to clarify that we do need more of these sources from the vegetables for omega-3s, just because our body has to break it down a lot more. And sometimes for some people, it's a little bit more difficult to break it down and process it to make it more of a bioavailable source to make it easier for the body to use. So we get more omega-3s or better omega-3s in fish. So if we go to the next slide. These are the best sources of omega-3s. These are super easy for your body to absorb because they're already broken down a little bit more. So it's easier for our bodies to take and put them to work. So salmon, anchovies, tuna, oysters, even shrimp. I know it's not on the list, but shrimp also has some omega-3. So if you're not into fish, you can always do shellfish. I just want to point out, though, that swordfish does contain a higher level of mercury. Still okay for you to eat it. They just recommend limiting it to once a week if that's your favorite fish. But definitely you can always try a different combination of different fishes or whichever you prefer. Sometimes canned tuna is an option that even has some omega-3s in it, so that's really beneficial too. And yeah, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan and these sources don't work for you, you can always supplement as well. They do have an algae supplementation, which is a really good source of omega-3 as well. Or if you're okay with fish, you can do fish oil or cod liver oil. Those are other supplementations that you could try for omega-3s. All right. And yeah, and that's everything for the diet part.
Oil, and you made me shudder.
I could talk about food all day.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that was great. Thank you, Alina. All right, so now we will open it up to questions. So hopefully, and here's my information if you want to reach out, or if you have questions that you're too shy to ask right now and you want to shoot me an email, I'm always willing to chat with you via email.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mika, could you take her information and put it in the chat for me as well? That was awesome. That was such great information. I so appreciate you ladies coming on. We have 8 people on, what is this? Instagram, and 12 on Facebook.
Nice.
So we're hitting every little avenue here. The only thing we didn't do was YouTube. I did have a question. I don't know if it was really a question or more of a statement from someone on Facebook. I think her name is Raiderette, and she says this helps with Hashimoto's. She says she's so fatigued and extreme pain from chronic inflammation and mixed connective tissue disease.
Right.
So she's trying to find out if it would help with Hashimoto's and all of her other issues.
Yes, I mean, there is research on that for Hashimoto's, and any inflammatory disease, you can find relief using CBD because of the anti-inflammatory. And plus, I mean, any chronic condition, to have a decrease in anxiety, to me, that's a huge thing. It's hard to deal with a lot of these conditions. So anything that we can do to sort of just take, I've clients who say to me, you know, it really just takes the edge off. It just helps to decrease my anxiety and keep me a little more even keeled. So yes, I would say for sure.
Okay, awesome, awesome. We have Lori on Instagram. She asks, what is the difference in taking CBD versus THC? I know you touched on that briefly in your presentation.
Yeah, so they're both cannabinoids in the plant. They both are potent anti-inflammatories. They have a lot of similarities, but the THC has the intoxicating effect. So people, you have to watch how much you use if you don't want to be intoxicated. The CBD is better for anxiety. Some people actually get anxious using THC. They get the rapid heart rate and dry mouth, and it's anxiety provoking for a lot of people. But interesting, if you need some THC, and there are certain conditions that THC is better suited for, so appetite stimulation, for example, if you consume CBD along with it, it tamps down on that psychoactivity, on that intoxicating effect. So if you take 5 milligrams of THC alone, for some people, that would make them uncomfortable. If you take 5 of THC along with 5 of CBD, it just brings it down a little bit, and they can take that amount of medicine without being intoxicated.
Awesome, awesome. And you touched on this earlier as well. What about someone who has severe discoid lupus? So discoid lupus is the skin lupus.
Yes.
And she's asking, you know, what type of things would you suggest with that?
I would definitely try a topical. I would try a topical salve. There's research on people who have skin cancers, basal cell carcinomas, and they use a topical CBD, and it actually can help with that. There's research on that. And for all sorts of skin conditions, dermatitis. So I would use a topical, but I'd also address the internal inflammation too. So I would probably supplement that with either a tincture or a soft gel, or, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of gummies because of the artificial colors and flavors and all the sugar, but an edible via a soft gel, or if you've got some CBD, I mean, I use peppermint CBD tincture, and I might put it with a little bit of yogurt and a frozen banana and a little bit of cocoa or a little chocolate milk, and I make a little smoothie. Or I make brownies. I actually make black bean brownies with some peppermint tincture in there.
Oh, that sounds tasty, actually. I might have to come visit and have that.
There you go. Anytime, anytime.
That sounds tasty. Someone on Facebook asked, Amanda says, can you use CBD if you have a DVT? Okay, these are all.
A DVT, right? That's a blood clot.
Yeah. So you talked about that with the warfarin. Someone else asked about the warfarin and how it's not really, something that you can do.
Right, right. Well, interesting, right. I see the warfarin, the only reason that taking an edible CBD with the warfarin may be not a good idea is because of the breaking down in the liver. It doesn't have to do with the DVT or a stroke. There's research that shows that if someone has a stroke, if they get CBD right afterwards, it decreases the long-term negative effects. And that's true with concussion. That's true with traumatic brain injuries and concussion too.
Wow.
If you get, I've had probably 10 clients with concussion, and we get them on CBD very, very quickly. And the research shows, in fact, that's something that in the patent by the US government, there was a line in there, right? Alina, we saw that this week. There was a line in there that said to decrease damage from strokes, they found that CBD was helpful. So I don't know of any reason that for a DVT that you would not take CBD. Obviously, I would check with your doctor, but the fact that CBD opens up blood vessels is a good thing. If your blood vessels are dilated, they get a little bit bigger, it sort of allows more blood through. I would think that would be a good thing.
Right. Awesome. Thank you for that. Someone just sent me an email.
Wow, you're getting, boy, you are a multitasker. Raquel, you go, girl.
Someone, Wendy asked, using a vape pen, is that liquid, wax, or dry herb? That's our first question.
That's a very good question. You can use any of those. You can buy a vaporizer that vaporizes dry flower, especially if you grow your own, because you can save a lot of money if it's legal where you are to grow a plant. I grew one last year, and the first year I completely killed it. It was a beautiful girl, and I was like, oh, good, go. And then I think I went away for a week and I didn't have someone water it, and I came home and it was all. But if you grow a plant and you've got some flower, for sure you can buy one of those dry flower vaporizers. And what happens is it burns at a lower temperature. So when you combust something, when you smoke a joint, you're combusting, I can't remember if it's how many degrees, but it's like 500 degrees. And that's what causes some of the caustic, the toxic stuff in your lungs. Whereas if you vaporize, you can do it at a lower temperature. So you can either do the dry flower vaporizer, or you can buy a vape pen, which they sell at dispensaries. And that's, I mean, it's more convenient because you can just keep it in your purse. And, my client had to have a scan, an MRI this week. And I said to her, be sure you bring your vape pen, because it was uncomfortable for her. I said, take an edible. We got her some peanut butter that had some THC in it. So she had a little tiny bit of peanut butter before she left. And then she brought the vape pen to help her manage the pain. So yeah, so awesome. Either a vape pen with a cartridge or a dry herb. And what was the other one? Wax?
Wax, liquid wax, or dry herb?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the liquid wax.
Okay.
Actually, okay. No, I know the other two I do, but I know people who, because the wax is pretty concentrated, and I've never dealt with that myself.
Gotcha. Thank you for your question, Wendy. Heather asked, can CBD, I know you talked about this earlier as well, can CBD cause low blood pressure in some people?
Yes.
I guess like you stated, if they're already suffering from that, then yes.
It can lower your blood pressure a little bit, which people might be able to lower their high blood pressure medication when they add CBD. Wow. But if your blood pressure is so low that you are sometimes dizzy or faint, you have to be careful with CBD.
Okay. Yes. Okay. We have another question. Are there any medical doctors that are knowledgeable about lupus and cannabis? Now, that's a tough question. There's so many little doctors that aren't even knowledgeable about lupus itself. So I
Right,
can't imagine both of them
or
together.
cannabis. So to get them to intersect,
Yeah.
there are some doctors that Dr. Bonnie Goldstein is in California. She's the author. I teach a class on cannabis therapy
Mhm.
at John Patrick University, and I'm using her book as a textbook. I think she's been doing it for a decade, so I'm sure she's dealt with people who have lupus. Dr. Mary Clifton, I believe, is in New York. Dr. Uma, and Uma D. I can never say her last name, but Dr. Uma is in the. If you just Google Dr. Uma, she's a goddess of cannabis, so she's probably dealt with people too that have lupus.
Awesome. And let's see if there's any on. I had a young lady that was on Instagram that wanted to come in and ask the question herself, but I don't see her on here any longer. And Mika is being she's one of our core members. She's being such a doll and putting everything in.
Yay. Thank you, Mika.
So it'll show all over. The last question I think that I have, what's the best and purest method for consumption?
Wow, that varies. That varies from person to person. I mean, I can't say that there's one. It depends on the person's lifestyle, their condition. I mean, an edible is good for me because it's convenient and it just offers a little anti-anxiety, but I'm not on any other medications. So for someone else, it might be a tincture. Someone has anxiety, a tincture under the tongue is very calming. It's peppermint. They take deep breaths. That's the best for them. For someone who has very severe pain, they might use a water-soluble tincture where you put a little bit, 5 drops in a little water and drink it quickly, and that takes effect very quickly. I guess you could argue that the vaping may not be the cleanest, but it's got benefits. It's fast relief. And interestingly, they've looked at long-term heavy cannabis users. There is no increase in lung cancer risk, 0. There's just not, because the benefits of the cannabis, the healthy compounds in the cannabis outweigh any potential toxins from the smoke. So
Wow.
That's what.
Wow. Awesome information. I thought I saw some more questions. Hold
Come
on.
on, more questions. Come on.
We're going to take a
Come
couple.
on, Mika, you must have a question.
Mika has used cannabis before, so
Okay,
she's
good.
been answering some questions in there as well.
Nice. What
Heather,
works, Mika, what works best for you? You smoke it? Do you eat it? What do you do?
I have used the topical.
Okay.
That has helped with pain in my legs.
Mhm.
And I've also used the topical for the pain in my back.
Sure.
And I've used the under the tongue, the drops,
Mhm.
for to help me sleep at night, because sometimes I can't sleep.
Sure.
So that helps for sleeping. I have smoked it before, and that also helps with sleep.
Okay, good. All right.
awesome. Thank you, Mika. Has anybody else tried cannabis before? You can just raise your hand or just say yep.
Yep.
Well, clearly the cat has used it because the cat hasn't moved all night.
Well, the cat actually got a hold of mine and started bringing it towards me. I was like, no, oh my God, what are you doing? She's still a kitten. I have a question. What type of cannabis is the best for pain?
Do you mean what particular strain or cultivar? I mean, I hate to say, but it varies, because there are terpenes in the plant, and
Okay.
beta caryophyllene is a terpene that's particularly good for pain. That's something that's in the soft gel that I take. It's just a terpene that they add to the soft gels. And if you're taking it during the day and you're looking for pain relief, but you don't want to be sedated, then pinene is a particular terpene that is energizing. and it's also good for ADHD. If you might have a little anxiety going on, you would look for a strain or a cultivar that has linalool, because that's very relaxing. If you're going to use it before bed, then you want something with myrcene, myrcene, myrcene. So that's very sedating. So when you look, and when I went to the dispensary with my client last week, we looked and they did have the terpene breakdown, which a few years ago they didn't, because she actually gave us one and it had THCV, and that's a terpene that actually suppresses appetite. So I'm working with another client who is very overweight and she has very severe pain. And so we worked and we found, I think it was cherry OG, I might be wrong. And she said it really helped with the pain, but she said, I had the munchies so bad that I just wanted to eat everything in sight. So I told her that we need to find a strain that has THCV, be like Victor. So that terpene suppresses appetite. So, you know, that's something that if you're afraid of getting the munchies.
No, I don't care.
You don't care? Okay. Then you don't have to worry about THCV.
I love it.
Yeah.
Because I give my daughter CBD because she has lupus
Mhm.
to avoid a flare.
Mm.
And
Great.
last night she came in the house. I don't know what happened, and she fell and she smashed her jaw against the dining room table
Ew.
and twisted her back.
Oh.
It was just a bizarre, like a freak accident. So I
Mm.
gave her some CBD that I have that I get through the mail, and I gave her I doubled the dose
Yeah.
because she was in pain. She fell asleep.
Oh.
I
Wow.
mean, and she was like, "Oh, I love this CBD so much, Mom." It really does help her a lot.
I'm telling you, it's, and until you see that, as I said, until you really witness the profound effect that it can have on people's health and well-being, you just don't understand it. And I didn't. 5 years ago, I didn't understand that. I didn't get it. I didn't know what an endocannabinoid system was. I was never trained in that when I did my internship. So it's really pretty amazing the more you
It's
learn.
awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have about 2 more questions and then we're going to be respectful of your time because I know you've been very busy.
I'll sit here all night.
D on Facebook's, she states, could you explain the difference between how a tincture is metabolized versus an edible?
Okay.
You can't take NSAIDs, and I
NSAIDs,
take, I take immune suppressants that interact with cannabis.
Immune suppressants that interact with cannabis, right? Because CBD and cannabis, it's sort of, it modulates your immune system, and the reason that it's so good for autoimmune diseases is because it sort of prevents your body from like attacking itself, right? It sort of tones down your immune system so it doesn't go into overdrive. So if she's on an immunosuppressive drug, you said, right? So
Yes.
this would potentially interact. So a tincture, when you hold it under your tongue, it's absorbed directly into your blood. But if you eat it, in some of your tincture, you are going to swallow. So some of it becomes an edible. So you might absorb the first 70 or 80% through the membranes in your mouth, and it's absorbed within 15 minutes, and then some you'll swallow. So the difference is that when you eat it, it goes through your liver, and that's where it can interact with other medications.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if that did that answer the question?
I think you answered the question. You just, I guess everybody needs to understand that you really have to be careful and you have to know your own medication regimen in order
Right.
to really work in getting cannabis involved in your own treatment.
Yes.
So, and like we always say, please always check with your doctor first.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you're looking to find a cannabis professional, we can contact Ms. Bissex and get her to talk to you about how she can help you do that.
Yeah.
Shayla, did you have a question? I saw you raise your hand, but I'm not sure whether you had a question or not.
I did not have a question.
I think
was
Wendy-
answering
Wendy-
the question.
Wendy's raising her hand.
Wendy, you have another question?
You're on mute, Wendy.
Unmute
Okay.
yourself.
There you
Okay.
go.
So, it's just so hard because I had the question about a medical doctor that was knowledgeable in lupus and cannabis, because I see a variety of doctors, and when I first mentioned it, it's like, oh, there's no medical proof behind, like it's almost like they don't want to know, they don't know, and they're not going to advise you to try it. So these are the
That's the
doctors that are
problem.
prescribing you the medicine, but then how do you so one doctor, my pulmonologist, actually, I told her, because she's like, oh, you're doing so well, what have you, and I was like, well, off the record, between me and you, I've been dry herb vaping cannabis.
Right.
Which means I don't have to use the inhaler, I don't have to use the Zopanex, none of that. And I look for, like you said, strains that are high in, that have pinene. There's only one dispensary. I live in Jersey, and I have
Okay.
a medical card, and there's only one dispensary that gives the terpene profile. So I'm always studying and reading, and I because I have a lung condition, I only dry herb vape.
Perfect.
And but it's just hard to, how do I make sure I'm doing the right thing with the medicines that I'm taking in my condition and cannabis, because nobody, and then there is a medical doctor that I know that she actually renewed my prescription after a year,
Mhm.
but after my trial and error and my reading and my research, I basically know more than she does. Like I go in and I kind of school her as
Absolutely.
to,
Absolutely.
So,
And that's fine.
I would say 95% of doctors know, and they're not interested.
Mhm.
And to me, it's almost like you really owe it to your patients to have a minimal amount of knowledge about this, right? And when they say, oh, there's not enough research, that's baloney. Because on my website, I've got probably 300 research studies listed. And every day there's a new one that comes out. One came out today from Harvard, and they just released it sometime this week, and it was on people with chronic pain. And they found that, I can't remember what percent, but a high percentage of people with chronic pain, they were given medical cannabis and they had very good results. But it does take, Wendy, it does take trial and error, because now what works for you might not work for Raquel,
Right.
which might not work for me. So I might say sour diesel takes care of my pain, and yet Mika's going to say, oh gosh, no, I like black cherry kush or whatever. Some of these
Right.
names are really,
So
so
Cherry Kush sounds good though. Really.
but yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. And what I really recommend is write it down, get a little notebook and just write down, this is what I tried, this is how I felt. I got this side effect. Maybe one will give you a dry mouth and the other one won't give you a dry mouth. One will make you hungry.
I'm OCD with that. I have like 10 pages of notes in my phone, because every time I try something, I always
You're
record
good.
what temperature, what time of day. And
You're
I
good.
made up my own little scale system about how psychoactive does it make me feel, sleepy, whatever.
Nice.
So,
And that's important, because even if you all get a chance, go to janibiswellness.com so that you can pick up her simple guide to CBD. In her book, she has all this great information, and in the back, she has a journal that you can use to do those type of things. It's a great book. You really need to get it. Yes. There we go.
There it is.
Please support her. Please support her, because this book has taught me. It took me 2 days to read it, only because I was so busy, but it taught me so much that I didn't know. So when you get a chance, definitely go to her website. Just 2 more questions. One question and a comment that is really good. Your question is, I'm interested in taking CBD for pain with lupus and sleep, but I currently take Ambien. I had a drug test at a pain management clinic, and the THC showed up. Would it benefit me to take CBD with THC?
Yes, but it doesn't mean it won't show up on a drug test, though.
Gotcha.
I mean, if it's not going to mask a drug test, it can decrease the psychoactivity. And
Right.
some people find, I have clients who used to be on Ambien and they don't need the Ambien anymore because
Wow.
they're getting relief for sleep using cannabis.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Mika, would you post the book for me? Would you post that for me? The name of the book is Simple Guide to CBD. I'm sorry, I'm doing so much. This last comment, and then we're going to let you go because it is getting late and my salad's still sitting in front of me and I'm hungry.
Dinner time.
Kim says off of Facebook, I'm on medical marijuana and I'm doing so much better. I'm mobile and less inflammation. It's been a godsend. And she also states that you can go to leafly.com. I'm not sure if anyone has
Yes,
heard of that.
I was actually going to say that.
Awesome. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, leafly.com is a great resource. You go on there and you could say, I want a particular strain that has pinene and has THCV, and it will give you strains that meet your quality. I was going to say that when we were just talking, so I'm glad that she mentioned that, because that's really important. It's a good, another good resource is projectcbd.org.
Okay.
They're a great resource where you can go on and put in the search that you're interested in lupus or any other condition, and it will tell you the research that's out there on there. And the other thing, what was I going to say about the doctors? The doctors that don't know anything about cannabis. Well, many of them don't. So they say, oh, I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, I have a friend whose mother she's in pain. She's in her 80s. She's in such severe pain. And my friend went and said, we'd like to give her CBD, right? CBD. I mean, and the doctor said, oh, I don't think that's a good idea because she's on all the, and I said to my friend, tell your doctor, first, either get another doctor,
All right.
or, but
Right.
when a doctor says that to an 85-year-old, the 85-year-old more often than not is going to say, well, then I don't want to try it. And she eventually did convince her mother to try the CBD, and it helped her. So we really have to, I think you all know this better than anyone, but we have to be our own advocate, and we have to find practitioners who will listen to us, and who will be open to alternative treatments versus, I mean, doctors, many of them, not all of them, they just want to write a prescription, right? Here, take this. I have a client that I saw her for the first time 3 weeks ago. She has post-polio syndrome and has a ton of pain. And she emailed me last week and she said, it's the first time in 15 years that she hasn't had to take Percocet. 15 years. She said, and I've gone 3 days without taking a Percocet. And this is just with CBD. This isn't even cannabis. This is a water-soluble CBD that she drinks. And I think she's only taking 7 drops 2 or 3 times a day.
Wow.
So it works for a lot of people. That's what I know.
Right. And yeah, I mean, and to your point, we do have to be our best advocate.
Oh,
and
yes.
If your doctor's not listening, find a doctor that will. And, and it's hard to remove yourself from the doctor that you have.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes if they're not listening to you, hey, this is my body and I know my body and this is what I want and I need you on board with it. So sometimes you got to be a little tough and nasty sometimes, but
that's right.
It's your body, it's your body.
Do it. We got to do it.
You have to do it. And the last thing is, Kim states Stanprint app, STRAIN print app. You can log your sessions when you medicate and what works and doesn't work for you. So
Print. Okay.
Now they have apps.
I've never used that. Oh, there's an app for that.
There's an app for that. Well, this has been so helpful. It has been helpful in my own journey. I know that everybody that has come on via Instagram, Facebook, Zoom, You had a lot of people coming in. You have 9, it was 10 here at one point. There's 11 now on Instagram, and then there's 10 on Facebook right now. So
Great.
it's great that people actually were able to tune in. And this will be available on Facebook as well as YouTube.
Right.
So if you want to refer back to it, and if you need, we're going to post everything for Cannabis Wellness on our website, as well as on all our social media accounts, so that you can easily click it, get the book, and speak to her about what can be helpful for you.
Yeah.
You know, are there any closing statements that you want to make, Janice?
Let's see. I love talking with you all. This was fun. And like I said, reach out, let me know how you're doing. Let me know if you have questions. Be your own advocate. Try something different. Think outside the box, and just check with your doctor, even though he or she probably isn't going to know much about it. But we always have to say that, check with your doctor, and at least let them know what you're doing. You don't have to ask them. You don't have to ask their permission. You can just say, I'm going to try CBD, or I'm going to try this,
Right.
so that you know, because we don't want to hide that from our medical professionals. It's important that they know, especially when you go in and you're doing better. I have so many clients who say to me, well, I went, a man with Parkinson's who went in, and his practitioner said, 2 of them said, what are you doing differently? You're walking with your old swagger. And he told them, he said, I'm taking CBD. And they're like, well, whatever it is, you just keep doing it.
It's working.
Yeah.
Awesome. And there's so much information in your book. If you get the book, you can just take that and you can sit down with your doctor and say, look, this is what I read.
Right.
And this is how I feel about it. Let's work together to get it done.
I love it.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Thank you. You are an amazing person. I've had such a pleasure talking with you here and before the event. So please, let's keep in touch. And everyone, make sure you go to cannabiswellness.com and make sure you participate in her activities on her page, and, patronize her page, especially with the book, and then contact her to find out what you need to do to get yourself some CBD oils or something that can help you outside of what you're already doing. So thank you once again. This is Lupus in Color, where we strive to educate, inspire, encourage, and empower lupus warriors and their supporters worldwide. I appreciate all of you taking the time out to come and visit with us on this event, and we'll look forward to you joining us for some of our May lupus awareness events coming up. Our next meeting is going to be April 25th. Am I right, Mika? Doggone it. The last Sunday of April. And it'll be via Zoom, and you can go to lupusincolor.com/events to sign up for it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Janice. Thank you so much, Alina. I'm glad that you were able to get on. And I appreciate you all. And we've been on for an hour and a half, and that's great.
Right.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. You all have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.